Have you ever wondered how ancient empires kept millions of people in line? It wasn't with laws as we know them, it was with fear. Before mercy was written into our legal codes, power announced itself through pain. In the ancient world, punishment was theater. Public squares weren't just for markets, they were stages for consequences, where empires taught obedience through spectacular cruelty. This was a language everyone understood, from Mesopotamia to Egypt and across forgotten kingdoms. Now swallowed by sand, rulers claimed divine right, arguing that suffering preserved cosmic balance. And the crowds, they gathered not to question, but to learn how to survive. Stone tablets promised justice, but delivered severity. Exile, forced labor, and ritualized death, all framed as grim necessity. Judges would look to the stars and omens before passing sentences, binding earthly law to the heavens. Archaeologists have found that the very architecture of ancient cities was designed to reinforce this fear, with grand plazas built for public judgment. Why so harsh? Forbidden texts, later hidden or destroyed, reveal a chilling strategy. Terror unified populations faster than trust. It was a tool to control vast territories where armies couldn't always reach. As civilizations faced crises like drought, floods, and famine, punishments grew even harsher. Rulers, anxious about losing control, tightened their grip. We've uncovered massive construction projects, monuments built by the hands of those condemned to labor instead of a quick death. This wasn't random violence. It was a calculated system to stabilize societies on the brink. Over centuries, as empires rose and fell, this history was deliberately sought. Records of extreme punishments were erased or reframed as justice. Libraries were burned, and translations were altered to fit new moral codes. It was a strategic suppression of memory, ensuring future generations inherited authority without understanding the suffering that built it. Today, modern technology is pulling back the curtain. We're scanning ruins, digitizing texts, and using data to reconstruct these forgotten systems of control. We're finding that the cruelest punishments weren't just acts of rage. They were sophisticated tools of governance. This evidence forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our civilization was built on a foundation of fear. Remembering this history isn't about dwelling on the past. It's about understanding the deep roots of power, control, and what it truly means to be civilized. Ever wondered how ancient empires kept millions in line without modern police forces? It wasn't just with armies. They turned punishment into a spectacle, a chillingly effective form of theater. Priests, officials, and the public all played their parts, making authority seem divine and orderly, not just brutal. Think of amphitheaters and city gates. Archaeology shows they were built for maximum visibility, turning judgment into a public lesson where fear traveled faster than soldiers. Forbidden texts and cryptic maps hint at places of exile, barren zones where the condemned were sent to be forgotten. This history of cruelty was often a tool of propaganda. Rival empires would exaggerate each other's brutality to justify their own conquests, blurring the line between truth and political spin. Over time, history itself was curated. Scribes and translators softened the language of punishment, reframing state violence as divine judgment or moral lessons. They simply omitted the methods deemed as shameful for the official record. This editing protected the continuity of power, allowing new rulers to inherit authority without confronting the violent foundations it was built upon. Today, modern technology is peeling back these layers of silence. Digital mapping and site reconstructions allow us to see how fear was literally built into the infrastructure of ancient cities. We can now correlate spikes in punishment severity with periods of climate stress and resource scarcity, confirming that desperation fueled cruelty. This research reveals an uncomfortable truth. Cruelty wasn't an occasional breakdown of civilization. It was part of its operating system. The legacy of ancient punishment isn't just the pain that was inflicted, but the silence that was inherited, a powerful reminder that progress often stands on foundations of deliberately forgotten suffering. Think of ancient empires, and you might picture grand armies and towering monuments. But what about the tools they used to maintain control? It wasn't just soldiers. It was something far more precise and terrifying. Punishment, refined into a public spectacle. In places like Rome, Persia, and even dynasties lost to time, punishment wasn't just about discipline. It was a ceremony. Priests, officials, and crowds moved with rehearsed turning sentences into rituals that reinforced the emperor's divine authority. The punishment was often symbolic, designed to mirror the crime itself, creating a belief that suffering somehow restored cosmic balance. Criminals were displayed as lessons, their suffering a public warning. Amphitheaters and city gates were even designed for maximum visibility, transforming judgment into a shared, chilling experience that normalized cruelty and embedded it into law, faith, and the very layout of the city. Fear traveled faster than any army. But what about the punishments we can't see? Some civilizations practiced a different kind of cruelty. Erasure. Ancient maps show barren zones, labeled with warnings, places of exile, not settlement. Forbidden texts speak of crimes punished by having your name wiped from all records, your family scattered, your memory destroyed. Imagine being punished not with pain, but with non-existence. Archaeologists find settlements abruptly abandoned, tools left medusa, hinting at forced removals. These invisible punishments left fewer bones, but deeper scars, shaping obedience through the fear of disappearing entirely. This system of punishment also became a tool of diplomacy and propaganda. Rival empires would exaggerate each other's cruelty to justify conquest, blurring the line between truth and fiction. Over time, history itself was curated. Scribes and translators softened brutal language, reframing state violence as divine judgment or moral lessons. But modern technology is now pulling back the curtain on this edited history. Digital reconstructions allow us to visualize how fear circulated through ancient cities. Data mapping shows punishment sites were deliberately placed along major trade routes and borders, maximizing their psychological impact. What this reveals is unsettling. Cruelty wasn't a bug in the system. It was a feature and invisible infrastructure that supported expansion, order, and belief. The legacy of ancient punishment isn't just the pain that was inflicted, but the silence that was inherited. It's a reminder that our own legal systems, stripped of the spectacle, often echo this ancient logic of control. Progress is real, but it often stands on a foundation of suffering that societies have deliberately chosen to forget. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history.